I'll call the meeting to order of the special meeting of Board of Directors Thursday, December 19th of the Joshua Basin Water District. And I will ask the General Manager if he'll lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 3, determination of a quorum.
President Johnson, you have a quorum.
All right. Director Reynolds told me he may be a tad bit late, but we'll see what happens. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I would. Okay, second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
So moved, so done. Public comment. At this time, set aside for public comment on any district-related matter not appearing on the agenda. Government code prohibits the board from taking action on these items, but they may be referred to for future consideration. Please state your name and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Are there any public comments? Seeing, hearing none, we'll move on. Consent calendar. Matters on the consent calendar are considered routine in nature. That will be enacted in a single motion without discussion. Any board member or member of the public may request that an item be removed from the consent calendar and acted on separately. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar, which includes the October 2019 check registry, which is always one of my favorites, draft minutes from the November 20th meeting, and rates and fees schedule increase.
Do you want to reserve that for yourself since that's one of your favorites?
Oh, sure. I'll move that we approve the consent calendar.
And two of those things have been through the Finance Committee, so they looked good.
And it was riveting, the Finance Committee was.
It is. It is.
All right, I'll entertain a motion or a second.
Was that a second, Rebecca?
Yes.
All right, the second. And all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
So moved, so done. Item number 7, 18 audit presentation. And is that
okay,
Susan or?
Yeah, I'll start.
All right.
The audit's complete. We had to reschedule tonight's meeting because, of the cancellation of the regular meeting. And so the audit manager that worked on our audit was not available, but we have Andy Beck from FEDAC and Brown here tonight to talk to us about the audit. I'll probably just leave it until he's done, and then we can I'll finish up after that. So.
Well, welcome, Andy.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if how to cue or what to the presentation.
Yeah, we got it. Make sure it's on. Is it on? Okay, no. Yeah, the forward, the back and forward.
Mike, hot out of the field.
Sorry, technical.
I knew it was going to tighten it.
Challenges, yeah.
Well, thank you, Ms. Weir. My name is Andy Beck, and I am the audit manager at FEDAC and Brown. And at FEDAC and Brown, we specialize in auditing special districts. Some of the employees involved in the audit of the district was Christopher Brown, the audit partner, Charles FEDAC, our technical review partner, and Alec German, the audit staff. So from time to time, I get asked, why does a district need an audit? An audit is required by the California Government Code and must be conducted by an independent certified public accountant. The code requires that the partner rotate every 6 years, and a copy of the audit report must be submitted to the state. The district distributes its report to other organizations listed here, such as the County of San Bernardino, LAFCO, Mojave Water Agency, banks and lenders, reports to bondholders, just to name a few. In addition, the district makes this audit report available to the general public on its website. The purpose of an audit is to determine whether the financial statements are free of material misstatement and prepared in accordance with GAAP. An audit is not designed to detect fraud and must be, well, however, we must be professionally skeptical and be alert for fraud. Other types of audit include audits of internal controls and forensic audits. We perform our audit based on rules. The rules for auditing is governed by the AICPA's Statement on Auditing Standards and based on the U.S. Comptroller's Governmental Auditing Standards, or the Yellow Book. The rules for preparing financial statements is governed by GASB, or Governmental Accounting Standards Board. And based on the audit, we provide an opinion. In the case of the district, we provide an unmodified, clean opinion by saying that the financial statements are fairly stated. Financial highlights. Here we have the statements of net position, which includes all assets or financial resources, deferred outflows of resources, liabilities or obligations to creditors, net position, or the district's net worth. In the case of the district, total assets and deferred outflows of resources increased by approximately $1.8 million. Total liabilities and deferred inflows of resources increased $3.1 million. And net position decreased $1.3 million to $37 million, of which $8 million is unrestricted and available for future use. Here we have the statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position, which is accounted for on the full accrued basis of accounting. On the full accrued basis of accounting, your revenues are reported when earned, and your expenses are reported when incurred. In the case of the district, total revenues increased by approximately $500,000. Total expenses increased by approximately $2.2 million. Capital contributions decreased $280,000, decreasing net position to by $1.3 million. We also provide a management report which consists of our communication to those charged with governance. In the case of the district, that would be the board of directors. We also provide our communication of control deficiencies. In our communication with those charged with governance, we are required to communicate any significant estimates or sensitive note disclosures. In the case of the district, cash equivalents, accounts receivable, capital assets, and pension were all significant estimates and sensitive note disclosures. We noted no difficulties encountered in performing the audit, there were no disagreements with management, and there were no management consultation with other independent accountants. In our communication of control deficiency, we noted no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. So to summarize, we gave the district an unmodified or clean opinion, which is the best opinion you could get. Net position decreased by approximately $1.3 million, where total revenues increased $500,000. Total expenses increased $2.2 million, and capital contributions decreased $280,000. I would like to conclude by thanking management and staff of the district for their assistance during the audit, and I would open the floor to any questions.
I'll say that the Finance Committee had the opportunity to take a look at this, and clean is a very nice terminology, and we gave it a good once-over, and we're hoping that the board will accept the findings that we've presented here this evening. Rebecca?
I have nothing to add.
Comments from the board?
Well, the first thing, from a bird's eye view, somebody may notice is the $1.3 million. And I think that should be discussed. We spent a lot of money on our equipment and moving to get our water mains replaced. And so just wanted to bring that up and, you know, there is value to that money that's spent.
No, good point,
So it's
yeah.
noticed and noted.
Is there another term, sparkling clean? Because I'm guessing with this group it was sparkling clean, so, especially with Ann. But no, it's very good news, and congratulations once again on doing such a stellar job. I don't know, our auditors should probably give us a discount, I think, because
I'll talk to
So
Chris.
easy to work, yeah, with Dan. Right.
no, but sincerely congratulations.
How many weeks off do you have till the next one?
Yeah.
I think we talked with Chris about starting in February this time.
As far as the interim testing, I wasn't in the loop, but I know he's been
February
pushing
or
clients to
March.
do it in February.
Yeah.
So we'll be at it
We'll
in
start again.
February again. It takes an enormous amount of effort, increasing continuously. You can see even now in the audits, they include information about future, requirements, things that are on the horizon for us, additional obligations that we have to meet in the audit process. So this is a continuously expanding, arena. And, the credit here goes to Ann, While every financial transaction here at the district ultimately ends in this report here, someone's got to pull it all together. Someone's got to make it right. This is the book that, that does that. It's a, 5-inch binder. It's an enormous amount of work, and the credit goes to this lady right here. So we're so lucky to have her.
Indeed.
Director Flon?
So what, a couple of things caught my eye. I'm looking on page 3, which is 3391. Talking about the statement of revenues, I believe, it says that this statement measures the success of the district's operations over the past year. It can be used to determine if the district has successfully recovered all of its costs through its rates and charges.
Oh, he's
A
got
little
the
bit
old one.
below, in the final, well, second to the last paragraph.
Where are you, Tom?
You're looking at your old
Page
packet.
30, I think, maybe.
I am, because that's where my notes are.
Yeah. So what page are we then?
I think it's page 30 of the packet.
And then in the second to the last paragraph, it says, one of the most important questions asked about a district's finances is the district better off or worse as a result of this year's activities? And then we see this thing about position, where our net position has decreased by 3.1%, which is $1,290,843. So then when I go back over and I look at Susan's letter, which your comments about Ann are definitely agreed with, and your staff. I have to dig for this, hold on a second. But I think we can skip that part. But what concerns me is whether or not some of these sort of temporary expenses that occurred, like buying twice as much water, I think that was $916,000 for a couple of years, and this huge amount, $606,000 for depreciation expense for various studies. And could you talk about that, by the way? It's this part where it says that these studies are fully depreciated immediately upon capitalization. That means as soon as you get them, you got to pay for them?
Yeah, maybe Andy could talk about that.
So studies are typically not capitalized. They're just expense. They're, I would say, routine. And just in general, GAAP has it where you don't capitalize it. They're just expensed.
It's just an expense.
Yes.
So even a report that has a life, a rate study has a 5-year life. GAAP doesn't allow that be capitalized. We capitalize it, but we expense it. We fully depreciate it, which means we expense it at the same time. So it sits as an asset on our books, but its value has already been,
So did I read somewhere that cash includes some of our investments that are going to mature within a year? Did I see something like that?
current assets.
As far as the cash that, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you,
To my knowledge, the cash that the district holds is mostly LAIF, and
Yes.
LAIF is pretty liquid. You can take it out anytime you want.
I'm talking about maturity, when some of our investments mature, and say if you have within a year, when you can report the income from that, the revenue from that, is there a way that could be moved this way or that way, so that our position can be, I hate to say the word manipulated, but at least shown somewhat differently? I think of this as kind of like a clothespin on a clothesline, and the clothespin is in the middle, and you want to move it this way and that.
So with either shorter or longer maturities, is that what you're meaning with that?
Yeah, but if you could claim or report the revenue of it within a year of its maturity, you could do it you can report that maturity in 12 months early, or 1 month early, and that would affect your balance, wouldn't it? Should we skip this part?
No. So basically, there is a note in here as far as cash and cash equivalents. It's on note 1D2. It says substantially all of the district's cash is invested in interest-bearing accounts. The district considers all highly liquid investment with maturity of 3 months or less to be cash equivalents. And with that being said, say that you do have an investment that's long-term. What you're going to have on your balance sheet is going to be current investments. You're going to have non-current investments, but they're all going to be fully disclosed or included in your balance sheet. So no matter when it matures, it doesn't really matter. And as far as investment income, you guys record investment income as you get either dividends or interest.
Which is
So whether it's long-term or short-term, it doesn't have any effect.
And as I understand it, our investments, there are restrictions by law about where those investments can take place. And that, I'm saying a lot of this for the camera, just to get some of this out. Oh, there went my train of thought. Oh yeah, they're restricted by law as to where they can be. We can't just make up stuff about where this money's going to go. And I think an extremely high percentage of the money that we have invested through LAIF is in government stuff. It's not, I think it's like 5% or something at the most is invested in something that's non-governmental, I think.
Right. The government code regulates where these investments can be made, and our investment policy is, essentially mirrors the government code.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to
Right. Exactly.
say.
Right.
It's
Very specific, and always the security of the investment is the primary concern, not the return on the investment. That is the last consideration. This is the people's money, and it has to be protected.
Yes, and available. But regarding the interest earnings, those are up somewhat because we have unspent.
Right.
But then that's
Capital.
counterbalanced by the interest that we're paying on that too,
Right.
which is something that's kind of fascinating. Is, for example, somehow everything that we have capital, which is stuff, it's things. Capital is not money necessarily. If we borrow a bunch of money, that's kind of a negative thing on that side. But then we've used some of it to purchase, say, $1.7 million for heavy equipment, which is something that we use to earn money by keeping the district going. So does this stuff all have to be formulated somehow where, and then you have to factor in too, well, you're making money with the tractors, but they're depreciating over 10 years too.
Right.
And so it's, I mean, how do you do how do you do this is kind of what my question is, in a way that is, follows the Government Accounting Standing Board's rule number whatever it happens to be, or is that not done? to where you have to do these calculations with depreciation on one side and interest on that same side, and then
No.
income with,
There's not a requirement.
okay, we don't
To
have to
do
do that
that.
kind of stuff.
I mean, those would be questions that the board could ask the staff. And we'd like to know, you know, X, Y, and Z, and we could analyze that for you. But those are not requirements of the audit or any other governmental entity. Important to understand that the equipment that was purchased is an asset. That's not an expense. That's not why our expenses increased. Those are assets for the most part. I mean, there's some increase in expenses, I mean, associated with the staff that we hired before the project started. But, you know, that equipment, that $1.7 million is capital, that's not expense.
So this, I'm just kind of curious on this $606,000 in money for reports and something, studies. When the board is considering entering into a contract with, say, Fedek and Brown or somebody, that would be a good example, since they're standing here.
Yeah.
If we enter in a contract with them for, we'll say $100 to do the work, then the board would considers that $100 as the cost of contracting with Fedek and Brown for their accounting services. Is one of the reasons this number is seemingly so high because when you calculate that number, you're considering your staff time?
Whatever costs are allocated to the project itself, but ordinarily it wouldn't be staff time. We don't allocate staff time to projects like that unless the staff time is the most significant component. I mean, if it's more than 50% of the actual cost to complete the work. I'm not
So these
remembering,
studies
do you
are
remember?
The Chromium 6 study
Yeah, I mean,
was the big one.
Okay.
And, I mean, I don't remember all of them that were
Yeah.
included in that number, but for example, we currently have the wastewater treatment strategy. That's the kind of study that would
Right.
be included in,
Right.
in this kind of figure. But the large one was the Chromium study that we closed last year and appreciated within the first
Right.
month, so that it's basically expensed.
Right.
Just briefly, one more thing. When
If I could, I don't remember if you recall when I brought back the reserve policy to the board. Remember, we're set to review that every single year. When we come back, we recommended that we increase the annual funding for reports and studies to $100,000 a year. This is exactly why. There's a lot of this kind of stuff that goes on at our water district. And we're not funding nearly enough to keep on pace with that, so. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
I think I'll stop making a mess of myself now. Thank you, Andy.
Are there any
Thank
comments
you.
from the public? If not, then I'll entertain a motion to receive and accept and file the 1819 audit.
I recommend that I move that we receive, ask questions, which we have, accept and file the 1819 audit.
Is there a second? Second to that? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved, so done. Thank you, Andy.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good report.
Yes, sir. Number 8, review of draft collection policy SB998.
Okay, we've been at this for some time. Hopefully we can conclude at least this important piece of it tonight. This has been before the board in more general terms. It's been to the Finance Committee in more specific terms a few times. And we're here tonight to hopefully approve the collection policy, which is written to comply with the requirement in the SB998 law that says you have to have a written policy on discontinuation of residential service for non-payment. That is articulated in the new code. This policy is written to comply with that. The district didn't have a really comprehensive policy about this issue. You know, there were bits and pieces, there were procedures that weren't well articulated, agreements that the board had made with customers over the years, and I brought all those kinds of things to bear on this policy so that, you know, we can bring some of the knowledge that I have that others perhaps don't into this one document that, you know, will be a really useful living document. I mean, I see this growing even more over time. An example is that I'd love to see the whole lean process and policy brought into this document once we've got a good written policy about that. So quite onerous, this policy. You know, I've been implementing all these kinds of policies for 30 years here at the Water District, and this is 1,000% more than any one that I've done in all the years. So very complex. The intention with this law is to help residential people avoid disconnection of water service. So to that end, the timeline for disconnecting water service for non-payment increases from the current 35 days past the billing date to 60 days past the delinquent date. So we add a couple of months to the cycle here. Low-income customers are supposed to provide doctor notes, and then alternative payment arrangements can be given to them to avoid disconnection. Allowing them this extended time frame to pay their bill before they're locked off. When the billing and service addresses are different, then a notice has to be provided both to the customer, a written, it's called this disconnection notice, a written disconnection notice, as well as the same or a very similar notice sent to the occupant at the address when the service address and the billing address are different. We have a lot of those in our water district. And even people who live there who get their mail at a P.O. box by choice. You know, impossible to keep up on that on a continuous basis. The only option is to send two notices if for any reason those addresses are different. We can't rely on the customer to tell us that although the bill is still going to the P.O. box, I have a tenant living there now. We can't rely on that from them, and then we would not have complied with this notification requirement to the person who is actually using the water, and is very clear that that's a strong intention of this policy is that the people using the water are notified before they're disconnected. We also have to put all these notices and the policy in English and Spanish. So the volume of the paperwork will increase because you all get an Edison bill and it's got all those languages. It's just more writing, which increases the amount of paper and the printing and even potentially mailing costs over time. But, we don't quite know yet. We haven't developed all of these. We have to have this policy. We have to put it on our website. We have to provide it. Is there something? Oh, I'm sorry. Thought I saw you. We have to provide it, a copy to people. We'll be stapling it to the tag when we're, tagging properties. This policy will be all over the place. Okay. Door hanger tags need to be posted at each property in a prominent location at least 48 hours ahead of time. So that's something that we don't do now. We do it by letter. New procedure, hundreds of these. We project it will take 2 days probably to hang all the tags, which we don't even do now. Interest charges on delinquent bills for low-income customers have to be waived once every 12 months. It's a little complicated with our software, but reconnection fees for low-income customers during business hours are limited to $50 and $150 after hours, or less if our actual cost is less. Currently, our actual cost is a bit less than that, so our cost will prevail, not these. The nice thing about this is there's an annual escalator built into this law, and that hardly ever happens. So, yay. The cost will be, the maximum allowable cost will increase over time. So we'll be able to, keep pace with inflation, which is so important. If a customer subject to disconnection, so somebody who gets this notice, has 10 days to make some arrangements, makes a payment arrangement with us, and now they don't get disconnected, they have another 60 days to not pay before we give them a 5-day notice, and then they get disconnected. Let's see. The new law allows many people to dispute the water bill: an adult at the residence, a resident of the premises, or a tenant of the customer can dispute the bill. So we have all kinds of people, practically anybody, you know, can dispute the bill, which eliminates the disconnection process and results in an investigation. So one of the things that we're implementing there is that that has to be done in writing now. We have a more informal approach about that now, but that's not going to work now when we're dealing with this very strict policy. So people will have to request a waiver, you know, or an investigation in writing from the district. So the disconnection cycle resets, remember, from 35 days after billing to 60 days after delinquent. So there will be no disconnections at all in the month of February and March, and the first time that we'll disconnect under this new law will be in April.
Susan, I had a question.
Yeah.
Right now, here at the end of this year, do we actually have disconnections that are going to take place before the end of the year?
We just did disconnections.
The first week of
Yeah.
December, and
then
December's will be done the first week of January.
Yeah.
So it's not, this doesn't apply like retroactively. If you have been caught in the disconnection timeline before this goes into effect, you're under the old laws?
Oh, yes, yeah.
Okay.
It's, you know, what's the status as of April, and then everybody will be subject to the new policy at that point.
And I thought this takes place on January 1st?
It's February
February
1st. It's
1st.
effective, but because of the timeline, we can't just start disconnecting in February, because we all have all this notification, and we have to go from 35 days after billing to 60 days after delinquent. And so that reset doesn't allow us to implement it on February 1.
So the I'm sorry, go ahead.
You were
The reset, I guess I'm trying to, the reset actually starts January 1, but the law goes into effect February 1?
No, the reset starts
February 1.
Yeah.
So if someone in January is now delinquent 60 days in January,
They would have already been subject to disconnection.
because they've been in the old one,
policy.
okay, thank you,
So
I'm sorry.
disconnections will occur in January under the old routine.
Okay.
But as of February, we can't disconnect anymore under the old law. Okay, that's what happens.
My simple question was, what's the time frame from due date to delinquent date?
Almost 5.75 months, nearly 6 months. Yeah.
Thank you.
So we already approached the Finance Committee about the guarantee deposit, because, you know, when you go from, 3 months to nearly double, the guarantee deposit needs to also go up. And so their recommendation is that we start that with the CAC, that we start that discussion about an increase, because based on the numbers and the
That's
average bill as of
significant.
January of
Yeah.
next year, the average bill is over $80, and the deposit should be $400. It's $225 right now, and it's going up to $255 on January 1. So it's another
Word.
pretty significant increase.
But if it was really realistic, it'd be the
It needs to be
$400.
Right, okay. So we'll start that discussion
Isn't there a darn thing we can do about
with
it?
CAC.
Thank
right.
you, CAC.
Yep, so, we had to amend a few of the other rules and regulations, because it creates conflict now with this new policy, so that's also in the resolution that is proposed tonight. Next steps, we have to redesign the water bill. Sokol Creek Water District was an early implementer, the only one that we knew of in the entire state. They were getting new software, so they decided to bring all these, software changes into, the conversion, their software conversion basically, and take care of it. So they were an early implementer. Virtually every policy except one that I've seen so far is based on the Sokol Creek policy, which is, it's decent. One of the problems that they had was that customers were upset because they allowed the bill balances to go up so high before they were disconnected. The bills are going out every month, So I said, did you redesign your bill? And they said, no. So I see that as the main problem. You're going to have your current amount, your plus 1 month, your plus 2 month, your plus 3 month, your plus 4, which is now subject to disconnect, okay? So, you know, visually making this very clear is what's needed, and so we'll be, again, redesigning the water bill to accommodate that. So then, you know, once we get this policy approved, it needs to be translated into Spanish. There are some other notices that need to be changed internally. Those will also have to be translated into Spanish. And then software changes to accommodate all of that. It's a big, really big deal. So those are the next steps. As far as fiscal impact, we will not know the full impact of this for several years. The first full year of write-off of this will not occur until 6/30/22. So, you know, you'll have a partial write-off next year and a partial write-off actually no write-off next year and a partial write-off the following year. So we don't write off for unpaid bills until they're at least 1 year old. So they're still considered potentially receivable, you know, if they're 9 months old, whatever. So then there will be quite a bit of increased administrative costs for operating this program. Tagging, 2 days of tagging houses, you know. More notices, all these occupant notices, potentially more printing costs, more mailing costs, you know, depending on how large, these notices now have to be in multiple languages. So hand delivery of door hangers, payment arrangements, managing payment arrangements now, making sure that people are paying in accordance with the agreement, otherwise they're in violation, you know. So we have to redesign the water bill, that has costs. We have all this programming that has to be done, that has upfront costs. So really at this point in time, no estimate at all of what that will be, and the problem is, or I guess the reality is, that we have no option. So we are stuck doing this or something like this in order to implement this law.
Who's the brilliant legislator that authored this bill?
Senator Dodd. And already we heard from Michael Colantuno is the one that is helping us with this process as well, and he's very connected in the state politically, and he serves on the committee that reviews the omnibus bill every single year. So he's one of only like a dozen attorneys. So he knows a lot about what's happening with legislation. And the League of California Cities approached Senator Dodd for some stuff in the law that just wasn't well written, and he was not willing to entertain any kind of amendments to the bill this year at all. And in fact, the bill hasn't been implemented yet. It's not even effective until February. So I kind of get his reasoning in that, but he will be willing, I guess, to talk about it next year. And then what would happen is it would be incorporated into the omnibus bill, if they could get agreement with it, and then it would be effective January 1, 2021. Okay, so you're still a year out at least until any potential change to this law is put in place. What's really important is for us to be really aware, to be documenting any challenges, any problems that we're having with this law, because we want to be ready to give our input and be part of the solution when those opportunities arise. When Aqua sends the call out that, that gosh, Senator Dodd's, meeting on this date, and, we need letters, or, whatever it is, we want to have our real information that we can share about how this isn't working or what the pitfalls are, how it's not doing what it was intended to do. In my mind, after all my decades of experience, I do not think that allowing people who can't pay to start with, allowing them an opportunity to run the bill up even higher in any way helps them. I don't see that. I don't see that at all. And I think that's what this program is going to, the results that we're going to see here. If I can't pay 80, how in the world am I going to pay 400?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Senator Dodd.
I'll take comments from the board. I'll start with Director Hunt.
Well, I just wanted to start with saying I think you just hit the nail on the head, because to me, if somebody has such low income that they're running into this problem, not talking about someone that is just blowing us off.
Right.
This doesn't make it any better, because they just dig themselves deeper and deeper.
Yeah, they'll never get out.
And there was legislation past, and I guess they're still working on that, to provide, you know, subsidies to low-income folks to help them, you know, pay their water bills just like they do for electricity and gas. And to me, that's the solution, not this. This is a nightmare from my perspective, and I'm sure even more so from yours. I was just curious what the low-income threshold is.
Well, it is all those folks, it spells out what types of recipient, it's on page 93 of the packet. Recipients of CalWorks, CalFresh, General Assistance, Medi-Cal, Supplemental Security Income, or State Supplementary Payment Program, California Special Supplemental Nutrition Program for Women, Infants, and Children, WIC, or a customer who is willing to declare that, in writing, that the household's income is less than 200% of the federal poverty level. So they don't even have to receive any of this. All they have to do is tell us.
I was curious about the federal poverty levels.
Oh, interesting. You looked it up.
And for 2020, for one person, I mean, this is really poverty. For one person, the federal poverty level is $12,490. For two people, it's $16,910. For three people, it's $21,330. For a family of four, it's $25,750. For a family of five, it's $30,170. A family of six, $34,590. So these are significantly low income. However, it's double.
Yeah.
So it's for a single person, it'd be 25,000.
Yeah.
And I mean, this applies to everybody in
A lot.
And
yeah, so also, who would conduct the investigation?
That's a customer service function. So Sarah's department.
That's what I
yeah.
thought you were going to say. That does not sound
And then, you know, beyond that, to the general manager, and then ultimately to the board. That can go to the board.
Right.
That's the right.
But I mean, is there more in the law about like how you
Not at all.
conduct that investigation
Not at all.
or findings
No.
or determination?
And the policy's not spelled out. How you would do it is not spelled out at all. And, you know, we found this somewhere else and just brought in these as, they felt like reasonable steps in the process. And it's essentially what, you know, what we do already, so.
Right. So you just put together best practices there. It wasn't driven by the legislation?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right, thank you.
This, I'm on 86 of 105. It says interest charges for delinquent bills for low-income customers must be waived every 12 months. And at finance, when you first mentioned that, it's confusing because it sounds to me as if a low-income person who is delinquent in his bills and has interest charges, if he could, you know, he could run up 11 months of charges, and if he can hold out for one more month, we're going to forgive him?
It's 1 month of delinquent
not
charges.
all of the charges.
Not an entire year's worth. It's once every 12 months.
Oh, I see.
We have many customers who get delinquent charges every single month of the year.
And
I don't know if you're aware, we have 2,000 delinquent customers.
you mentioned some of those numbers at
I mean, it's a
finance
huge
is
number when we have
surprising.
5,500 customers.
Wow.
By the way, Bob's finance meeting this last time, which I can't participate in because of the Brown Act, but I can be there. The energy from you in particular, and also Ann, the intensity from Ann and the energy from you is quite impressive in your presentation that day. Since I don't have to do anything, I could just watch what's going on. It was quite noticeable. What I'm wondering about, though, and then I'll be quiet, is the staff time and cost relative, and you having the data on all of that, relative to our next rate study. And if this is potentially something so significant that it has to be factored in to our rates for the next five-year period, because ultimately all of this, we just go through it, but it's the expense of this is on the backs of the ratepayers.
Absolutely.
So it's not like we're stressing out over the work that's here necessarily, although it's difficult. I don't want to minimize that, but
Right.
the people that are benefiting from this also have to pay for
Yes.
its administration
Yes.
along with everybody else that has an account with it. So I was just wondering because you'll have some data by the time the next rate study
Yes.
comes in. And maybe that has to be one of the things that's considered. It's a cost that is so substantial that we have to recover that.
I think that, I mean, you hit the nail right on the head. That absolutely has to occur. And there are a lot of these costs that will be able to be passed on directly to these folks. I mean, even though you may qualify as a low-income person to have a payment arrangement to avoid disconnect, it doesn't mean that you don't have to pay all of the fees that are associated with disconnect if that occurs, Now, a cost such as bad debt is not a fee that can be passed along to people who are subject to this. So bad debt is a cost that would have to be figured into the rates themselves. But administrative costs, most of these I see as fee-based. I see that a lot of these are going to roll back right on to the people incurring the cost. And that's what it's supposed to do.
Is that, the bad debt, is that in the budget, is that up to about $100,000?
Oh, no. I think it's 35,000, something in that range. 28.
Thank goodness.
Yeah. But yeah, I think we can expect that to
That's
take
gonna
off in
rise
a
sharply.
pretty dramatic trajectory.
Thank you.
Since we have kind of two different packets, see, Mike has the new one, so he's on the 105 pages. Some of the rest of us are just going out of the, you got a new one too.
The finance or something?
Yeah, Beverly had, when she was printing these off, she didn't get all the audit stuff in, the ones that went in our
Okay, right.
packet, so.
Right.
So I'm looking on the section that is the markup copy of current rules and
That's on page
regulations.
87 of the packet. if you
87
follow
of the
along.
new packet.
Yep.
If you're looking in the old book, it's page 47 that I'm looking at. Article 1.24, turn off meter for non-payment. It says customers are encouraged to avoid disconnection water service for non-payment by contacting the district to determine if they're eligible for a payment arrangement, spread the balance. And I'm thinking, since we have that low income assistance program, and even the Citizens Advisory Council was looking at raising that from a $50 credit to a $100 credit, we have actually, the water district put, $5,000 in there. If we tell people they can use that and apply for that, we actually get our money back, because they're using it as a credit, and we'll actually get our, I would say that's going to be something a little more important to start turning people to, at least, even while it's $50, we'll still get our $50 back, maybe a few at a time, but that's one way of mitigating that high bill and having to get some of that money we've got sitting in a pot back to
Remember,
us.
the notice, which will go out both to the customer as well as the occupant, requires the district to, description of the procedure for the customer to obtain information on financial assistance if applicable. So that will be included along with all
Along
the
with that
other
notice.
local
What was that article number?
charities, that provide.
Article 1.24, let's see, on your page, it's on
88.
87.
It's actually
Oh,
88.
88.
It
I see
follows
it on
on to the
88.
next
88, there you
page.
That's
go,
why I
yeah,
couldn't
okay,
find it.
sorry
It
about that,
follows
yeah.
on to the next
Yeah.
page,
And then,
88.
that was kind of all I had in the markup, just that, because that goes in, that will go in the notice,
Yes.
not, and so when someone, if they call and say, oh, I'm gonna be late or whatever,
Right.
to say, well, have you applied for the low-income
Right.
credit?
Yeah.
And then on Exhibit A, the Joshua Basin Collection Policy. Oh, gosh.
Now, where the heck is that gonna be?
Page 92,
92?
92 of the markup.
And I was on page, then, looks like probably 92. Let's see, the collection of delinquent accounts, and this is kind of including notifications, fees applicable.
What section are we?
Exhibit A, Joshua Basin Water District Collections Policy. So it's 92 in the full packet. And I guess my question just was, as we start to look at people's, with their late bill, that late bill is everything. That's not just consumption charges.
Right.
That's standby fees and everything.
You mean basic fee?
Basic
Yes,
fee.
yeah.
And has the state yet decided to somehow differentiate
Oh,
in
no,
these things? So
absolutely
they're
not.
letting,
No.
okay, we consider all of that, okay,
Yeah.
all right.
No conservation consideration.
Okay, okay. On, further, it says small balance accounts, and it has like the 3/4 inch connection. Are we on 1 inch or 3/4? I mean, we've had this discussion before.
We have both. The
And
majority of the meters in the district are 3/4.
Okay.
The vast majority.
Okay.
Well over half,
Um,
probably 3/4 at least.
And then on page, this is just weird, it was, let's see, page 50 of the old one. It's waiver of delinquent notices and charges for the state of California.
Okay, that's
93.
93.
Page 93, number 4, essentially
That,
number 4.
that was like weird to me, and
State of California, because of the system that it takes to pay, I mean, there's a whole warrant system, it's gotta go to Sacramento, it's a very protracted
and that,
process, and it doesn't say that they can't pay, that they don't have to pay delinquent fees, but they have a protracted time in which they don't have to pay delinquent fees. So we've set their account up so that they don't pay
so,
delinquent.
yeah, so they don't, it says they will not be
At
sent the
all.
delinquent notices.
Right, yeah.
But then like Copper Mountain College, because they get paid on equivalent full-time student units
Yeah,
or
it's
something
the
like
same
that from
thing.
the state.
They came to the board many years ago and requested, and the board granted to them. So that was memorialized really nowhere except, you know, in the minutes of the district. So that's something I knew of. We were already doing that with the account. That's an example of what I wanted to bring in here to memorialize, you know, in one place.
Yeah.
You know.
The stuff, the stuff. You know, I think that's pretty much, they were just those little bat cleanup kind of stuff we didn't quite get to in finance, or I still had lingering questions, so take it away, Director Reynolds.
My goodness, I don't know if I should speak or hold my mouth tongue. Bill Dodd, my new hero, Democratic senator out of San Francisco. What was he thinking?
I don't know.
The blind leading the
don't know.
blind. And it got voted on. It passed.
It passed.
I actually know what he was thinking, because he is the senator that introduced the legislation to provide this assistance to low-income people. It got held up in the legislature, and he said, I'm done with that. And this was the substitute to that.
He had no idea that those are the same people that are going to
Yes.
get hurt.
Yeah. Right, yes.
We have to raise that deposit so much. A low-income family
Right.
moving to Joshua Tree could probably barely afford the first and last or deposit or whatever to get into their apartment. And now they're going to come up with huge deposit just to get water that they have to have. What was he thinking?
And it passed. I mean,
Let's
that's,
go buy that guy a hamburger. Okay, that's all I have to say.
That's why it is so critical that we really keep good data
This is-
on what's
right.
working and what's not working here, so we can be part of that solution. I mean, I can already see the handwriting on the wall here. This is, it's not gonna be good.
And it just slipped right through. I'm surprised I didn't hear anything about this in special districts.
I think actually that this was the way to appease him, because he was angry about, you know, that getting hung up in the legislature. This was, that's all I can think, is it was a way to appease him.
I can think of a way of doing something else, and
Yep,
I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed by what happened. It's just shocking. No, it's not shocking. I'm not surprised at all. It's just sad.
yeah.
Sad. Very sad.
We've discussed this at length. I think it's the blessing and the curse.
Yeah.
And
You hit the nail right on the
Gotta do
head.
it, no choice.
here we are, you know, and we've made more than our share of accommodations to try to take care of those, and here we are, putting another little bit of a heavy load on them, so. With that, I'll entertain a recommendation to adopt Resolution 19-1017.
Yeah, I'll move that the Board of Directors that we adopt resolution number 19-1017 collections policy.
Is there a second?
I will second that, and especially because of the good work done by our staff on making this work as good as it's going to work. That's why I can
Right.
very happily say, yes, I will second this, and thank you so much.
Right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. So moved, so done. All right, I think that takes us to future director meetings, public outreach, Ms. Kathleen Ratnich.
Season's greetings. I actually have two items specifically related to our conversation that we just had regarding SB998. The good news is that United Way of the Desert has arranged, what we're working through, that they will be out here quarterly, personally, to interact with our population that has a need for assistance. And we believe that their presence has made a difference, so they will come quarterly. And I think that's a very strong positive, at least kind of, yeah, we'll try. The second thing is I attended the Public Relations Coalition that is headed by Mojave Water Agency. They meet every month. I manage once a year. Bad me. But I went, and surprisingly, Nicholas, who oversees a lot of this stuff over at Mojave, the Alliance for Water Awareness and Conservation has been another entity under Mojave as the PR Coalition is. But he brought up at the PR Coalition that AWAC's kind of been dysfunctional, but they're going to reinvigorate it and start working it towards legislative issues. And he asked my opinion, since I've kind of been, straddling the line with both groups, if I was feeling there was a need, and I said absolutely, because of our Legislative and Public Information Committee. And he said what they're thinking of doing is having monthly telephone type conference calls, and he's flying up to Sacramento a lot, and he's going to take from the districts what are our burning issues and go up on our behalf. So I think that's another positive to throw out here after this gut-wrenching presentation of Susan. Sorry.
Kill the mess.
Your timing was good.
So I did want to share those two items. Plus, the other thing with the PR Coalition is that they are working on, at Mojave Water Agency, somewhat in the HR area, but because of the silver tsunami hitting everyone, Susan,
Yeah.
they have decided it's important to equip districts for outreach, ways to promote the water industry. So they are starting to look at creating outreach materials for public affairs to help us recruit and do things. So while it's not in my hand yet, I'm aware they're working on it, and I wanted to share that because I thought that was a Merry Christmas right there. The other things are just to mark your calendars. We have set up with the Mojave Desert Resource Conservation District. It will be in the newsletter coming out in January, but I have 4 conservation classes set up for free. They're paying for it. They will happen here. The first one is January 18th, Native Plants and Xeriscaping. So it's not just how to garden, it's how to save water. February 1st is Water Conservation and Soil Amendments, teaching people that our soil is bad and this is how you can fix the situation to save water. February 8th is basic drip irrigation design for those who want to do it themselves. And then on February 22nd, these are all Saturdays, irrigation troubleshooting for the homeowner. So we're trying to create courses that people don't have to go hire professionals to handle. They can learn to do it themselves. And so again, that will be in the upcoming January newsletter, the Teardrop. And lastly, I have set up a docent meeting for the new year, January 9th, here from 4 to 5 p.m. That's our report. Thank you.
Thank you. Legislative and Public Information Committee, that's Director Unger and Director Flowen. Meeting was on the 4th. Any report from that?
Let's see, I brought my file. We actually talked about a lot of stuff at that meeting, and at the MAC meeting, which was also here on the reports, CAC member Gail at the MAC meeting talked about the irrigation workshop, so that was really good. And we're planning for Water Education Day, March 29th, always a fun day. And let's see, that was, oh, and future agenda items for our, for this committee will be easements and their uses and their notifications. And, you know, it sounds like, oh, easements, they kind of came up at a meeting one night, and then talking with Mark, you know, this is why Pioneer Town Water went up Pioneer Town Road and didn't go on Skyline, because they couldn't get the easement to go the easy way on Skyline, so.
Started on that.
No. So our next meeting for this committee, it will be February 5th. It meets in the morning at 9:30 here. Everyone is invited. And Tom, did you want to add anything from that?
Only that we discussed more about the Hoover Commission, and I'm breaking that up into chapters. That's a committee that's got a couple of our, well, there's several legislators on it, but including Chad Mays, our local guy. And they talk about, they're an independent committee, and they talk about whatever they want to talk about and do research on whatever they want to do research on. One of the things that rolled a wrinkle in our business is that they wrote a report in about 2000 about whether or not special districts, which is what this is, are relevant or not. And so to just abbreviate, we talked about that.
And also, I see you've got the news clipping from the meeting we went to, which was kind of an outcome of the Legislative Public Information Committee. It was a emerging preparedness meeting at Copper Mountain Mesa. Yeah. And a group of, gosh, about 15, 16 people up there were trying to come together with some kind of, like, you know, they're a far-flung community out there, one of ours, you know, our ratepayers. And what are they going to do if there's the big earthquake, a fire, a flood, a zombie apocalypse was brought up. But interesting out there, and they've got an old well out there that still has some people that are involved in the upkeep of the well. But Tom and I thought it was important that, you know, we go, and it was a good meeting, and so we're going to go again. And a lot of things that we've talked about at the farmers market, certainly about, you know, preparing for those disasters. You know, we kind of had that information, you know, at the ready, and so that was a good meeting.
We're moving right along to December 9th at the MAC.
Oh, I was at the MAC. They didn't have any special presentations this time, but they always have sheriffs, highway patrol, county fire, Cal Fire, Morongo Valley Fire, and the kind of the big news was burn permits are being issued. So that was about it for the MAC.
All right, we had the finance meeting on the 11th, one of the most riveting meetings that anybody can possibly attend, and special thanks to the staff for all the hard work. Obviously, we saw the results in the audit and the deliberations with the SB998. Move on to Water Resources and Operations on the 11th. Director Hunn, Director Reynolds.
So I'm going to be very brief. Mike might have some things to add. Basically, we got an update on the progress of the CARP was the main agenda item, and it's much of the same. There's really good progress continuing to be made. There's plans being prepared for the next phase. We also had a staff report, and among other things, Mark covered the progress of the application or the submission of the plans and the application for the construction of our 4-log treatment, and kind of walked us through the process and the timeline. And it's, of course, like many other things here in the district, it's a very involved process from permitting to construction, and the hope is that it will all be done in time to get the well back online. I believe we were talking about potentially sometime in the summer, right? So, well 14. So we're finally gradually coming to the end of the road on that, but it's not something you can just go out there with a crew and do in a week. It's more involved than that. Mike?
I think you hit it well. There was one suggestion that came up on Gail had mentioned the MAC meeting, and which got me on remembering history. And wow, we used to attend that MAC meeting. We should go to that MAC meeting again. And lo and behold, thank you. Good job.
They'll start up full force again in January. They have presentations of things that are important to us here. They've been talking about broadband and other things like that. So yeah, the MAC meetings are good. They're important.
It was Gail also had made an unofficial request that that a water district or two, specifically Joshua Basin, be available to give reports at the MAC meeting as well. And,
reports, periodic presentations, that kind of thing.
Exactly. And so that was, yeah.
That's right, that's
Gail,
right.
where are you? She was on it.
General Manager Ban was looking for stuff to do in his spare time. So.
All right, Mojave Water Agency. On the 12th, Director Flowen.
Feast or famine. We started off with that exciting Finance Committee meeting. I attended that, and it was followed with the Water Resources and Operations Committee. I attended that, and then it was that night that we had the community meeting out in Copper Mountain Mesa, which, by the way, that's a very remote place out there, way out on Winters, but they are a tight community of some smart people out there. They're very perceptive. And I thought it was important that we did get the water district out there in a real way. We weren't so bad that we didn't get that we actually got invited back. and so we're gonna talk.
They liked us.
But what they did was they listed on a board there, on a chalkboard, they listed what their main concerns were with regards to emergencies. And then next to that, they started listing the remedies, potential remedies or mitigations for their concerns. And then there was a lot of discussion with that, and it was really quite good. And when we go back, we're going to get more specific about what some of the solution type things. So we did that in the evening, and then I got up in the morning and went to Mojave Water Agency on the 12th. Which was, I guess you could say it was not a substantial agenda because the attendance was very thin there. Tom, the general manager, he gave a substantial presentation about the history of Mojave Water Agency, how it started in 1960 and all this other kinds of stuff and what they do. And they do have a district, an area of California that's broken up into, what, 7 parts, I think? And we have a representative from our community on the Mojave Water Agency Board, which is the one of the southernmost ends of the California state water system. And it's Jim Ventura who has the biggest area because they break it up by population like we had to do here. And by the way, he did say some complimentary things about Joshua Tree and the board, and also he mentioned Kathleen's farmer's market booth too, with a certain amount of passion, I might say.
And he resides right here in Joshua Tree as well.
He used to be on our board.
It was very good.
Andy was a board member.
When I started, he was on our board.
I like about the whole thing is this is one of those things that can be kind of inefficient too, but in that sparsely attended meeting, we were there. And it's obvious that Joshua Tree is there and that we're almost always there. And they noticed that. These are politicians up there, and they notice that representatives from this relatively, compared to them, because they're in Apple Valley, 65-mile drive, that we're here too. And I like that. And Jim very well represents the southernmost part. He has a huge area, but he talks a lot about us down here, and I like that. Enough said. Thank you,
All
Mr.
right.
President.
The Mojave Water Agency TAC Advisory Committee, and that was Director Reynolds on the 19th, I think?
I went
Oh,
for
okay.
Mike.
I'm sorry?
I really like that TAC. That's really a good meeting, and they talk about a lot of things of the whole entire district, and there was two things that are really interesting, and they had to do with Barstow. Barstow has a perchlorate plume, and so the Lahontan Water Board was there to talk about it, and it seems like back in the 80s, there was some old guy that lived out there, and he had a pyrotechnical kind of business, did a lot of stuff with the Army base, and when he closed out his business, he just took his leftover perchlorate, this crystal stuff, and buried it on his property out there. And this is by Barstow. Well, in November 2010, they noticed that this perchlorate was, it's a small plume, and they had the map. It showed a small plume, but really high concentrations of perchlorate, something like 13,000 or something. And I think the 6 is like the parts per milliliter or something. And so they started to try to mitigate this thing, and it's in the groundwater and the ground soil itself. And yeah, and something out there, the people in the Soap Mine Road area of Barstow, and it's kind of where the 15 and the 40, it's in there. There's the mountains there, and over in the past 9 years, this plume they've tried to mitigate it. They got it down to 1,000 parts in one place, and 100 another, but it's expanding, and it's going south and going east, and it's just, it's a scary thing, and they've been getting grant funding for it, but that's going to be gone by about 2023, and some people say, well, maybe this Waterman Fault out there might kind of change the directions of things. And the TAC chairperson, Marina West, said, how comes no one didn't do any remedial stuff at the wellhead when they first discovered this 9 years ago? And then they're trying treatments to pump it out then. And the guy said the problem was money. There just wasn't money out there. And it's what they call an orphan site because there's no responsible party. The guy died. And this is a huge disaster out there. And then the second presentation, also on Barstow, was from, there's two projects for the city of Barstow that they want to put in the Mojave's integrated regional water management plan, and they have to do with, and this is in the perchlorate plume path, but with their septics, and to try to get money to as more money comes out, to help them get some people off the septics, the nitrates and all this. It's a major problem as well as being in that plume. And Barstow is an incorporated city of 23,000 people, and they are a severe disadvantaged, severe disadvantaged community. So they were very happy to get these couple of projects into, everyone gets to vote at these TAC meetings. It's a big room full of people. At least 40 people were there today, just in the general room, people from Mojave, from all over, High Desert Water, Bighorn Desert View, us, but it was no problem. No one had any problems by trying to get those projects, some funding. Lance was talking about that there might still be some, kind of some Prop 1 funding that might still be out there, but he's looking for people to kind of, how do we need to have some kind of a special grant person, a grant committee to work on all this stuff, and there's money out there. He said it's not as generous as it used to be, but but it was a really interesting meeting, and then they had a nice holiday lunch from Carpino's Italian restaurant,
Mama Carpino's,
which was Vicky's and Mickey's favorite restaurant. So I had a nice plate of pasta in their honor. So that was the TAC.
All right, thank you. Just to bring us up to speed on the ad hoc GM committee, the General Manager Committee, Director Reynolds and myself and General Manager Ban are continuing to work, and we hope to have a full report ready for the board hopefully by the 1st of February. So, but it seems a general consensus, at least with the ad hoc committee, is that we think General Manager Ban is doing an exceptional job. So just wanted to say thank you for your service. So with that, we'll have something, I think, ready for board action no later than February. And at this point in time, future director meetings, we have finance on January 8th. Let me back up. No meeting on January 1st. Happy New Year's Day. The next board meeting will be January 15th. And before I go on, go ahead, public comment? Is that?
Actually, I meant to insert before you got into that topic.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Is this on?
Well, it's as on as it's going to be.
Yeah. Jane Jarlsberg, resident of Joshua Tree. I just wanted to comment on the MAC meeting because I was the one actually that brought it up to the MAC meeting about, I think that this body should be on the agenda on a regular basis. Oh. And actually the radio station reporter put a picture of me at the podium saying that so I can document it.
All right.
It was on their website.
Good idea.
But,
it is a good idea.
But I thought we had talked about it before. I had brought it up before, maybe a couple of months ago, and I thought it was being considered. So I'm hoping that we've raised the topic a little more to the forefront.
So it could be done sort of like, after we've, because the MAC meeting is always the second Monday of the month.
Yeah.
So it might be a report, either something that was going on at the district, maybe at our, if we have a meeting before that, or one of their last meetings, kind of what would be important to people to know about what we're doing at Joshua Basin.
The fee raise, and I also did talk about the CAC, and actually Gail talked about the events happening, but she never mentioned that she was on the CAC. So I mentioned that she was and I was, and that, what our role is in the community, because I wanted them to be aware of it too, that it's important as a two-way. So when we go to those meetings, we'll get input from the rest of the unincorporated areas in this area. One of the things I'd like to know is what the boundary of the district is and where it reaches into these other incorporated communities. Like you're saying, Copper Mountain Mesa is part of the district.
It is. Was another.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Well,
they're not
say the
phasing,
other incorporated, like there's all these, like Pat.
Pat is in. Pat Flanagan is a representative from Desert Heights.
Right.
That is part of. It's on the west end of 29 Palms.
Right.
And kind of bumps up, I guess, to one of the ends there of Copper Mountain Mesa, kind of on the east end and the west end, and
Yeah, so I'm
it's up there
just
by the
curious how much
Basin.
overlap that they should also be interested in this water district.
No, they have
No.
29 Palms Water.
Pardon?
They're on 29 Palms Water.
Okay.
We don't overlap them.
And what about Yucca Mesa area up in there?
They have High Desert Water. They're on High Desert Water District.
I'm unclear, I need to get more educated.
We have a visual map after this meeting. I'll show it to you.
I know, it's a bunch of little aquifers that all have a very different personality, water flavor, kind of thing. And we're kind of sort of divided by aquifers in a way.
Yeah.
And also just, people where they've made their incorporation boundaries, where they made their sphere of influence boundaries, like Desert Heights is part of the sphere of influence of 29. Yucca Mesa is not part of the sphere of influence of the city of Yucca Valley, town of Yucca Valley, but they are customers for High Desert Water District.
Right. It is a little complicated, but part of my point is that I think that all of these communities should be concerned about what happens here in this district, because it does impact. People flow back and forth in the communities, and, anyways, that's one of my points.
I like to brag about Joshua Basin.
Yeah.
So.
As I was saying, January 1st, there's a New Year's Day, Happy New Year's. Next board meeting will be January 15th. Finance Committee is January 8th.
Yay!
At 9 o'clock. Water Resources, January 8th, 10:30. Mojave Water Agency on January 9th, that'll be 9:30. And Citizens Advisory Council will be on the 14th. And Joshua Basin Water District, as I said, on the 15th. And I'll entertain any other public comments at this point, and if I have none, then I will move that the board close for conference and closed session with legal counsel. So with that, we'll move to closed session. Bring us back into open session, and the
At 7:48.
7:48. The board met in closed session, report. The board met in closed session and by unanimous vote has agreed to allow Rutan and Tucker's claim for the amount of $6,840 and rejects the balance. And with that, I'll entertain a motion. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Aye.
All in favor? Aye.